All right, let's dive into this, shall we? Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck. This book, it really shakes things up in the self-help world.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Seems like you're looking to figure out what really matters.
Yeah.
What to focus on and what to, let go.
Exactly. Trying to get a handle on things.
Manson, he doesn't mess around.
He does not mince words.
He gets straight to it. Challenges a lot of what we think about happiness, success, all that.
That's why people love it. It's honest. Refreshing, in a world where everything's supposed to be so positive.
Right from the start, chapter 1, don't try.
Throws you for a loop.
He brings up Charles Bukowski. Not your typical self-help guru.
Right? Not at all. The poet.
Gritty, raw, real. He didn't hide his flaws.
Embrace them even.
And that's what people connected with.
That vulnerability.
It's funny, Bukowski's success, it didn't come from trying to be a winner.
Right.
More like he accepted himself radically.
Yeah.
Makes you question this whole always strive for more, be better thing.
Especially now, right? Social media, everyone's showing off their perfect life.
Oh, I know. It's so easy to compare, to feel like you're not enough.
But see those highlight reels, you start thinking, that's normal.
It's like I was scrolling through Instagram, saw a friend on this lavish vacation. Meanwhile, I'm at home, drowning in work. It's so easy to feel bad.
Manson calls it the feedback loop from hell. It's like a trick.
You think everyone's amazing except you?
Because we see those curated versions, not the real deal.
It's not a fair comparison at all.
No, not at all. It's a distortion of reality.
So in this context, not giving a feck, it's not apathy.
Yeah.
It's choosing not to play that game.
Opting out of the comparison trap, the unrealistic expectations.
We only have so much energy, attention.
Right.
We got to choose where to direct it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so not trying to be something we're not, that's one thing. But what about actually achieving something meaningful?
Right.
That's where chapter 2 comes in. Happiness comes from solving problems.
And here, he challenges another big idea, that we should avoid problems altogether.
Like happiness is about having zero problems.
Right. But he says it's the opposite. True fulfillment comes from struggling, but with the right things.
He uses this funny example, this old lady arguing with the cashier.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Over a 30-cent coupon. It's such a small thing, but she's so invested.
For her, it's not about the money.
Right.
It's a problem to solve, a way to feel in control.
So it's not the size of the problem, it's finding the right ones.
Yeah, the ones that fit with what you value. And when you overcome them, you feel good.
He calls it the shit you enjoy dealing with.
There are challenges that are tough, but we like them.
Like when I decided to learn coding. Frustrating at times, sure. But I kept going because I enjoyed the challenge.
That's it, the feeling of growth.
An aha moment when you finally figure something out.
That's what makes life feel good, fulfilling.
Now, chapter 3, you are not special. Here, Manson takes on the ego. He starts with this story about Jimmy, a big talking entrepreneur who doesn't actually do much.
Ah, yes, Jimmy. All talk, no action.
Classic example of what Manson calls entitlement.
And he deserves success without the work.
Blames everyone else for his failures.
Never takes responsibility.
I've definitely met Jimmys in my life.
We all have.
That inflated ego can't handle criticism.
They create their own reality where they're the exception.
It's interesting, though. Sometimes that entitlement isn't arrogance.
Oh.
It's like feeling uniquely flawed.
Yeah.
Like you're the only one who's ever had these problems.
Yes, you're the only one who's ever felt that way.
Two sides of the same coin, really.
Both come from this idea that you're separate, above or below everyone else.
So we're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
We all mess up, feel things.
We do.
It reminds me of this time in middle school. I got called to the principal's office.
Oh, no. What happened?
They accused me of bringing drugs to school. Searched my locker, my bag, everything.
Wow.
Completely mistaken identity. I was mortified.
That's been terrifying.
I felt so much shame, like I was the only one who had ever been through that.
That feeling of being singled out, it can feed into entitlement.
You start thinking you deserve special treatment because you were wronged.
It's amazing how these personal experiences connect to these bigger ideas.
How we see ourselves, the world.
Absolutely. And Manson takes this even further with the tyranny of exceptionalism.
Okay, so break it down. What's the tyranny, and who are these exceptional people?
It's this constant exposure to the best of the best online. Perfect lives, crazy successes.
The internet is full of it.
Outrageous memes, everything amplified.
24/7.
We see it so much, we start thinking it's normal.
Right, like everyone's living these amazing lives except you.
Exactly. It messes with your expectations.
Makes you feel inadequate.
Comparing yourself to the top 0.01%, forgetting most people are just average.
Then there's outrage porn. We get addicted to feeling offended by, well, anything.
It's like a competition for who's the most outraged.
Social media makes it worse, amplifying everything, losing all nuance.
It's hard to tell what's a real issue and what's just drama.
So with all this negativity, how do we escape it? How do we choose the right things to care about?
Good question. That's what Chapter 4 gets into, the importance of values.
He tells this incredible story about Hiru Onoda, this Japanese soldier.
Oh yeah, the one who was hiding in the jungle?
30 years after World War II had already ended.
He refused to believe it was over.
He was living off the land, even killed civilians, all because he was following orders to never surrender.
Wow.
It's an extreme example, but it shows how much our values shape us.
They dictate how we act, how we see the world.
Onoda thought he was doing the right thing, even though it was harmful.
His values were his reality.
It makes me think of musicians, like Dave Mustaine, kicked out of Metallica and started Megadeth.
Oh, yeah.
Or Pete Best, the drummer fired from the Beatles right before they hit it big. Both went through similar things, but reacted so differently.
Interesting.
Mustaine, he always measured himself against Metallica. Bitter, despite his own success.
While Best found happiness in a simple life, his family.
They prioritized different things, and their values reflected that.
So it's not about what happens to you, but what you choose to value.
Those values will guide you, shape your experience.
Exactly. And that leads us to another key idea, the difference between responsibility and fault.
It's like we use them interchangeably, but in Chapter 5, Manson's saying they're not the same at all.
Yeah, take responsibility. It's your fault.
Right. And to make that clear, he talks about William James, considered like the father of American psychology.
Yeah, James had a tough time early on.
Lots of health problems, depression.
He even thought about suicide.
But then he decided to try this experiment.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
For 1 year, he'd act like he was 100% responsible for everything that happened in his life.
Big mindset shift.
Huge. Instead of feeling like a victim, he took control.
Owned it.
And his life turned around. Successful career, happy family.
Makes you think.
It does. What if we all shifted our thinking like that?
From why me to what can I do?
But what about when something really is someone else's fault? When you're actually wronged? Does Manson say we should just, shrug it off?
That's where he brings up victimhood chic. It's in Chapter 5, too.
Oh.
He's not saying to ignore injustice,
Right.
but be careful about feeling offended all the time.
Because then real problems get lost in the noise.
Exactly, like crying wolf.
If everyone's always a victim, it's hard to take anyone seriously.
Social media doesn't help. It creates these echo chambers where outrage just explodes.
And nuance disappears.
It becomes hard to separate what's real from what's just drama.
Okay, so we got to watch out for that victimhood chic thing.
Yeah.
But with all this talk about choosing our struggles, taking responsibility, it can get overwhelming.
Yeah, where do you even start?
How do you know what's worth your energy?
That's what Chapter 6 tackles head on. You're wrong about everything, but so am I.
That title, it's a wake-up call.
Right. We've all got biases, blind spots. We're going to be wrong sometime.
The important thing is to learn to grow.
To be a little less wrong each time.
So being open to new information, changing your mind.
That's key.
He uses this experiment, people pushing buttons, and a light flashes, randomly giving them points.
No pattern at all, just chance.
But people start coming up with these theories about how to win,
Convinced they've cracked the code?
even though it's completely random.
Shows how much we want to find meaning even when it's not there.
So how do we avoid those traps? Tricking ourselves.
Manson has this idea, Manson's law of avoidance.
Okay.
The more something threatens who you think you are, the more you'll avoid it.
We build walls around our beliefs, even if they're hurting us.
Exactly.
It reminds me of this woman I met, Erin. She was super into self-improvement, but next level. She believed she could cure death.
Whoa.
It started after a near-death experience, got into energy healing, all that. At first it was interesting, but then she started talking about needing my energy for her mission, and things got a little weird.
Sounds intense.
It was like her whole identity was wrapped up in this idea.
Anything that challenged it was a threat.
Exactly. And it was like she was more focused on curing death than actually living.
Which brings us back to what Manson's saying. We got to be willing to challenge our beliefs, to be wrong.
If we're not, we get stuck.
Trapped in our own minds.
Okay, so we've got choosing our struggles, taking responsibility, being okay with being wrong. But how do we put this into practice?
That's where boundaries come in. Chapter 8, the importance of saying no.
Sounds easy enough.
But it can be so hard.
It can.
He talks about his own experience traveling the world for 5 years. Sounds amazing, right?
Adventurous.
But he realized he was running away from commitment.
So it's more about avoiding something deeper.
Yeah, he was spreading himself too thin, never committing fully.
And it left him feeling empty.
Dissatisfied.
He contrasts that with the happiness he found later, committing to his writing, his marriage, his close friends.
The real deal.
That's where saying no comes in. To really commit to something, you got to say no to everything else.
He uses Romeo and Juliet, the classic love story.
But when you look closer,
It's kind of a mess.
they're teenagers making impulsive decisions,
Driven by need, not healthy choice.
and it ends tragically.
It shows how unhealthy love is about needing someone to complete you.
Codependent,
Healthy love is about choosing each other.
respecting each other's space.
Manson tells the story about his wife. She loves to dress up, and she'll ask him for his honest opinion on her outfits.
And he doesn't hold back, does he?
Nope, he tells her what he thinks.
Which might seem harsh,
But it builds trust.
because he's being real with her.
And she respects his opinion, even if she doesn't always like it.
It's about putting the relationship first, even if it means being uncomfortable sometimes.
Exactly. Choosing honesty over feeling good all the time.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Choosing struggles, taking responsibility, being wrong, setting boundaries. But there's one more chapter,
And it's a big one.
chapter 9. And then you die.
Heavy stuff.
Manson gets deep here, makes you face the one thing we all share,
The end.
death. We're all gonna die.
He talks about Ernest Becker, who said we all have these immortality projects.
Things we cling to for meaning, to distract ourselves from dying.
Leaving a mark on the world.
Family, a business, art, something to outlive us.
Gives us a sense of purpose. Helps us cope with the fact that we won't be here forever.
But Manson also shares this story about his friend Josh.
Who died young.
Yeah, a cliff diving accident when they were teenagers.
Tragic.
It made Manson face his own mortality.
Changed his perspective.
He realized life is short, you can't waste it on things that don't matter.
He described standing on a cliff himself, feeling that fear, knowing he could die.
And in that moment, he felt truly alive.
That's powerful. Facing death can make you feel more alive.
Makes you ask, what do I really want to do with my time? What do I want to leave behind?
Big questions. Yeah, they really make you think about what's important, cut through the noise.
Not about being all doom and gloom, but like using that awareness to live better now.
Right, having that sense of urgency, not in a panicked way, but more like motivating.
So, after going through all this, Manson's book, what's the biggest thing that sticks with you?
I think it's that idea that happiness, real fulfillment, it doesn't come from avoiding problems or chasing after what other people think.
Yeah.
It's about finding the right struggles, the ones that, mean something to you, make you grow.
And being honest with yourself about what you actually care about
What you're willing to fight for.
and what you need to let go of.
Taking responsibility for your choices, even when you mess up.
Learning from those mistakes.
Being open to new information, changing your mind.
Not being afraid to be wrong.
Setting boundaries, saying no to things that drain you.
So you can focus on what matters,
And in the end, accepting what you can't control.
including death.
And using that knowledge to live a life with more meaning.
It's a lot to process, but hopefully this has been helpful.
Yeah, giving you some things to think about.
Definitely has for me. It's like we have a choice in how we experience the world,
We do.
even though life's tough, unpredictable.
It is.
We can focus on what matters, let the rest go.
Absolutely. I think that's a good point to end on.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about making choices that feel right, that fit with your values.
That lead to a good life.
Yeah, that's the goal.
So if you had to boil down Manson's message, one sentence, what would it be?
That's a tough one. I guess I'd say choose your struggles and don't sweat the small stuff.
That's perfect. Simple, but it says a lot.
Well, I think that wraps up our deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
And thanks for sharing this book. Hope you got something out of it.
Until next time.